Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm Santosh C. Ram Santana, representing Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders for a fair and inclusive budget, and we're here today to join our colleagues in urging the subcommittee to reinvest in the Naturalization Services Program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Jeanette Sanipatin on behalf of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, also in strong support of the program for all the reasons you've already heard. We definitely believe that there is going to be some type of offsetting cost in terms of the folks that are able to naturalize. There are some costs that we as a state will be able to also score on the savings side, and so we think that's really a critical component of this conversation. The other piece being is that these programs, as you heard, are really connected to immigrant communities, and so immigrants feel like they could trust these organizations to provide these services. But not only that, these organizations do a great job in connecting immigrants with the right resources that they need in order to successfully attain citizenship. So citizenship is not just about being eligible and applying through the application process, but you also have to prepare for the English language requirement and the civics component. And these programs do a great job of connecting folks with the right courses that they need to take to be better prepared and ensure that that $600 that they're investing in the application process actually leads them to attaining citizenship. So we urge your support for this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Jonathan Tran with the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. We're a national nonprofit organization based primarily in Washington, D.C., but about 8 years ago opened an office here in California because California is home to the largest resettlement of refugees anywhere in the world. We're here in strong support for reestablishing the funding for the NSP program because not only does it affect immigrants, but also refugees that, including those that fought alongside U.S. servicemen in the wars in Southeast Asia. A lot of these folks are spread out throughout California, including historically underserved populations like the Central Valley. So we strongly urge your support and look forward to working with the committee as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Ronald Coleman on behalf of the California Immigrant Policy Center. We're also here in very strong support of refunding the Naturalization Services Program with 2.5 million legal permanent residents in the state of California waiting to naturalize. We have to do something about this. You know, throughout the Central Valley, the Central Coast, Inland Empire, there are people waiting to be civically engaged and waiting to naturalize and become citizens. As we all know, citizenship comes with more economic mobility. And not only does that benefit the individual, but that certainly benefits the state of California as well with increased revenue. And we also know, as many people have noted before, that other state-funded immigrant programs like CFAP and like CAPI certainly will be offset by allowing people to naturalize and get their citizenship. So, you know, we certainly are very concerned about the scams that target immigrants all the time around this state on a number of issues, but citizenship, because of how much it holds and how important it is, it really does cause people to be targeted in a way that you may not necessarily be targeted for other things, because, you know, people really do want to attain that level of citizenship so they can be civically engaged, get those better jobs. And as we see with people that spoke a few minutes ago, you know, only being a citizen for about a week or two, and they're already here in the California legislature able to take time away from family and other obligations to come here and be a part of this hearing to ensure that we're able to refund the Naturalization Services Program. This is a very modest increase. It's very important for the state of California, important for the economy of the state of California, and we strongly support refunding the program. Thank you very much.
Next witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Vargas, representing the California Catholic Conference for the Public Policy Arm for the Bishops of California, who strongly believe this is a high priority, overdue funding for this program that really helps folks become the citizens. And over the years, you've seen the history of the church in helping immigrants, so we hope that you're able to reinvest in this program and help us meet that goal together. Thank you.
I thank you very much. I thank all the witnesses. We do have, I mentioned earlier, we're in receipt of a letter from the Latino Caucus. We also are in receipt of the letter from the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. And the colleague who had to depart asked me to add a comment to the record on his behalf. Roger Dickinson says, the NSP was a very valuable program in Sacramento during its existence, helping hundreds of immigrants with the rigors of naturalization. I will certainly keep the request for restoration of funding in mind as we proceed with the budget process. My comment on it is that partly because of my life experience growing up in immigrant communities, my father was a preacher who preached in Spanish-speaking churches, and everybody I knew as a kid was an immigrant. I have felt very, very strongly on the subject for a long time. We were able, as somebody mentioned in the testimony, to withstand the attempts to cut this program during the previous recession, 10, 12, whenever that was, 12 years ago. However, this most recent recession was deeper and longer, and we did more damage to more programs than happened the decade earlier. However, this is clearly a valuable program, and I'll just reference my earlier comments about our need to try to figure out how to do everything when we don't have enough money to do everything. So I don't think it's, I don't want people to walk away with my statement or Mr. Dickinson's as assurance that everything's going to be fine, because it's going to be very difficult choices to be made. But your participation today clearly has helped us, and we'll do the very best we can. So, thank you. And with that, we will move to the governor's budget change proposal. You've talked quite a bit about the weatherization programs. So let's talk about the use of cap-and-trade funds for weatherization and solar programs.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Department's BCP outlines the request and proposed use of $80 million in greenhouse gas reduction fund appropriation in the 2014-15 fiscal year, and a potential $80 million appropriation in the 15-16 fiscal year to support activities promoting greenhouse emission reductions in disadvantaged communities within the residential sector. The GHG reduction funds will be used to augment the Department's existing weatherization program and support weatherization service expansion in disadvantaged communities to achieve greenhouse emission reductions, improve the energy efficiency of residential dwellings occupied by low-income families, and reduce their energy-related expenditures. The allocated uses of the GHG reduction funds will model similar administrative structures of the annual LIHEAP and DOE federal energy assistance programs, whereby the Department retains a small percentage of the funds to support state operations and a balance to support local assistance activities. For the $80 million in GHG reduction funds for the 2014-15 fiscal year, this breaks down to $5 million being allocated to state operations and $75 million for local assistance. Just to highlight some of the key expenditures and activities within the state operation and local assistance budget categories. State operation expenditures includes $2.2 million for personnel and costs. That's related to supporting existing 13.9 existing positions and 10.5 temporary positions to support additional workload associated with the expenditure of these funds. $2.4 million that would be devoted to technical consulting contracts. Examples would include an economist to help identify co-benefits associated with GHG expenditure, benefiting low-income individuals in disadvantaged communities, to support the maintenance of the weatherization program in terms of training, technical support, and workmanship quality, and the development of outreach and marketing strategies to successfully direct weatherization services to affordable housing, multifamily properties located within the disadvantaged communities, and as well as third-party inspections to ensure the completeness of weatherization services delivered to residential housing. Local assistance includes, again, $75 million that would be appropriated to support local assistance activities. These funds are awarded to local sub-grantees responsible for the local administration and delivery of weatherization services to target households with lowest income, highest energy usage, and members of the vulnerable populations. CSC's local sub-grantee network is made up of community-based organizations and local government agencies that possess over 30 years of experience with providing this type of services, this type of weatherization services to low-income individuals and communities. Weatherization services will focus exclusively on areas designated as disadvantaged communities in accordance with the California Communities Environmental Health Screening Tool. These areas generally fall within 19 counties and regarded as having the highest burden of pollution and environmental effects and population characteristics, which includes sensitive populations and socioeconomic factors. CSD's internal analysis of historical service records and census information has determined a 4% service saturation in these areas. Also, we have reached out to the California Public Utility Commission to obtain information to assist the department in providing a more complete assessment of area saturation between the investor-owned utility programs that offer weatherization services to low-income utility customers. CSD will use this assessment to better direct targeting efforts within the disadvantaged community areas. To maximize the benefits of GHG appropriated funds, the department is exploring ways to leverage experiences gained from the administration of the DOE-R grant to maximize the benefits of these investments within disadvantaged communities. Understanding the goal of these investments is to further the objectives of AB 32, emission reductions. We also recognize there are significant noteworthy co-benefits directly associated with weatherization service activities, such as energy burden reduction, where weatherization services can reduce annual utility bills by 35%, resulting in a direct benefit to low-income households. Improved health and safety of substandard housing, which tends to be inhabited by low-income families. The leveraging of weatherization activities to improve the energy efficiency and preservation of affordable housing inventories in disadvantaged communities. And employment opportunities through the direct hires of individuals and subcontractors serving to the state's weatherization workforce, as well as contributing to the growing of the state's green job workforce. From the total $160 appropriation, the department estimates weatherizing a total of 23,700 residential units, with a target of completing 4,444 of those projects within by the end of the 14-15 budget year, and 7,690 in the 15-16 budget year. These target estimates include a share of single-family and multifamily housing stock, and the plans to complete the balance of estimated units by the conclusion of the 17-18 state fiscal year.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a number of questions, and since they weren't necessarily asked in the agenda, I hope you know the answers, but I will be certainly understanding if you want to say you're going to get back to us with the answers. The first one has to do with the list of providers that have been identified with the EnviroScreen tool. Now, am I correct in understanding that that tool is a direct result of SB 535, which said that the cap-and-trade funds are to be spent in disadvantaged communities? Is that where that tool was originated?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's part of the.
Yes.
Okay. So what's notable about it is that it appears that medium to larger counties have been selected, and some very, very poor smaller counties are not. Two examples that immediately come to mind, although there are more, are two of the poorest counties in the state, or three: Del Norte, Lake, and Imperial, all which by I think almost all economic indicators are impoverished, seriously impoverished, and have some of the lowest incomes in the state. So, can you give me any explanation of what the factors are that would choose the counties that are here and not some of those small and very small and more remote counties, but nonetheless that suffer a great deal of poverty?
Well, I can attempt to. One of the major factors or considerations is the burden of population. So depending on those areas in terms of air quality, or exposure or risk to or
It's
health.
not just an economic factor.
Exactly. There's pollution is another factor.
Can you list what the factors in the screening tool are?
I don't know them offhand, but
Well, we can find out.
Okay.
I mean, it's
right. But I do know population was one of the factors that received the most weight.
okay. Well, as coming from rural California, it's a notable item, and I want to be reassured that that's absolutely the way these were selected was absolutely necessary under the legislation, and it's not something that just because maybe it's a little further and harder to deal with in a small county, they haven't just been left off the list. So,
Yeah, no, there was definitely specific criteria in which they used in order to.
well, I would appreciate the committee receiving some further analysis of how those counties that are in were in, and some of the ones examples like counties like the examples that I gave
Okay.
are not. And just let me say, I think anybody who's been watching for the last 14, 16 years around here knows that I'm a big supporter of community services. And one of the programs that I think has been most effective has been the weatherization programs. It provides one of the few things we can do that is both environmentally beneficial and also helps pull people out of poverty, so, or at least reduces their daily expenses, monthly expenses, so that they can survive their poverty a little easier. That being said, we we've had hearings at both the Natural Resources Committee and at the Natural Resources Budget Subcommittee. Mr. Bloom has, Chairman Bloom has conducted hearings to try to scrutinize the governor's overall criteria and making sure that that all of the programs that are proposed to be funded out of cap and trade meet metrics that clearly justify the use of cap and trade, and it isn't simply backfilling other government programs with because it's a new money supply. And so the questions I'm about to ask you are in that context. It's not out of lack of support for, but just, and the reason why that's so important is because of the precedent for the future use of the greenhouse, the cap and trade money, and wanting to have the assurance that it isn't going to be viewed just as a fund to fund anything, and all you got to do is call it carbon reduction, and you can do it. Mm-hmm. We're asking the same thing of many other projects, like, for example, the high-speed rail. So the question is one of quantifying the estimated annual greenhouse gas emission reductions for the activities being proposed, and whether there are metrics being used to determine how specifically the weatherization will effectively accomplish the goals of AB 32.
Well, we're working. Well, the ARB is going to be working on defining the unified and standard metrics for measuring GHG or carbon reductions attributed to various activities funded by the GHG reduction funds. Weatherization in general, there are a number of tools that are out there that are can quantify energy savings as well as carbon reduction associated with weatherization activities. Within our own program, we do have various audit tools that do those calculations for us, even though the federal government doesn't put emphasis on reporting those outcomes to them. The reporting places emphasis on expenditures and household demographics served, but certainly we're in a position to provide those type of measurements resulting from weatherization activities.
So I've been led to understand that each department receiving funding was responsible for developing its own criteria of how to proceed. But you're saying that comparative. The other thing we're trying to do is make sure that we're spending the money on the things that are going to accomplish the most. And I'm pretty confident that weatherization is going to be one of them. But nonetheless, you have to have the basis for comparison, since you can't do all the things that could reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so. Does the department have the capacity or the ability to do those kinds of calculations, or are you being given some sort of a framework by the Air Board or other agencies or the governor's office by which you are asked to demonstrate the greenhouse gas reducing potential and how it's going to meet the metrics to demonstrate that it's the best use of the money?
So we have those calculations and metrics in place already. It's just a matter of making sure that we're using uniform standards across the board to make sure that the quantification of the benefits are consistent across all of the various areas of investments or investment sectors. So again, back to our program, and in general, energy efficiency, there are tools that are out there that, where most utilities already that fund weatherization recognize weatherization is a great resource to providing environmental benefits as well as energy reduction.
And ironically, I'm not questioning those.
Okay.
It sounds like I am, but it's but it really has more to do with trying to make sure that we've set up a framework to make sure that and set the precedent properly for the future, so that we are making those priority decisions specifically on an objective set of standards.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how the coordination in this particular program works with is Budget Sub 3, the Natural Resources Budget Subcommittee, because they are looking at the governor's expenditure plan as a whole, and I assume that they're looking at community services as part of that process. So we're not trying to duplicate what they're doing, but we will coordinate with them in the conversation about how to create that kind of a framework, not only for your program, but obviously for all the things that the governor has proposed and we in turn decide to approve in the utilization of these funds. So with that, we have any comments from the LAO?
Yep. Yes. Thank
I
you.
already give you a speech for you.
Pretty well, actually. Mark Newton with the LAO. Just a few general comments, and just wanted to alert the committee, as you may be aware, our office in February came out with a 16-page report specifically on the governor's cap and trade expenditure plan, which is a $850 million plan for the budget year. The point you raised, Mr. Chair, about the development of metrics, that's an issue that we raised in the report and feel very strongly about that. Metrics that look at sort of the performance of the activities in achieving greenhouse gas reductions, and that being very important. Just a few sort of points more on the administration of the proposal as far as CSD is concerned. There is a very similar weatherization program administered by the Public Utilities Commission in investor-owned utilities territory. So that's coordination between the Community Services Department and the PUC is very important. You don't want to duplicate outreach efforts and the like. Our understanding that there currently is pretty good coordination between the two entities, something that we encourage to continue. And just one other issue related to the PUC is that the PUC's program is funded by ratepayer assessments, and this $80 million proposal for 2014-15 to some degree sort of reduces the funding need for the PUC's program. So it would be something we encourage the PUC to sort of perhaps reassess its assessments and whether the assessments may need to be lowered because...
Doesn't that comment, though, kind of assume that the amount that's being allocated in both cases is specific to what the need is or the demand? In other words, you know, if it would only alleviate the need on the utility side if we were somehow getting all of the households that need to be, but I think there's a pretty large unweatherized backlog of homes in this state that need. So I just question whether or not saying that more resources over here means that they don't need as much over there.
Just the issue there, Mr. Chair, and you're sort of correct on sort of backlog or so. The statutory requirement, though, on IOUs is 100% of sort of responsibility for sort of weatherization of within their territory, and the CSD proposal would overlap with sort of IOU territory. So there's potential some overlap there, but your point's well taken.
Okay, thank you. Finance.
John Silva with the Department of Finance. Just a quick technical note that the proposal also includes provisional budget language to allow encumbrance for 2 years and liquidation over 3 years. So the program will roll out over 4 years.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that occurs to me before I open up public testimony and move on is another overlay relative to developing the cost effectiveness and metric for this is climate. Obviously, in the hottest places in the state and the coldest places in the state, although those might not completely coincide with the lowest incomes, or they may not, they may or may not, but nonetheless, if you're looking at trying to maximize the GHG benefit, then obviously the more energy that is saved because of the climate where the houses are treated would be one of the factors. I hope when you report to us about how the metric works that would be one of the pieces. And let us know whether it is. If not, we would probably want to encourage that be the case.
Well, you're correct.
Yeah, so thank you. Public testimony?
Mr. Chairman, Jack Walko on behalf of the Imperial Irrigation District. So you did provide quite an opening with your later comment. Being in the lowest economic county in Imperial, coincident with the hottest climate in California. IID serves both the Imperial and southeastern portions of Riverside County. So this money would be well spent, and it would shave off the need for peakers to run during the 118 to 125 degree day. And so we're eager to see what numbers come back in the metrics that the department utilizes to come up with this decision. But we're in agreement with your earlier question, so thank you for posing it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Next witness.
Hi, my name is Arlene Novotny from Access, Association of California Community and Energy Services. First, I wanted to say that the Energy Network also supports the naturalization program. It's been a lot of them have run those programs, and they are just, happy programs, basically. It's one of the only ones that are actually happy. I provided testimony, and I only have a couple of points. I think that the network is ready, just as we, maybe we weren't for ARA, but then we became ready, and now we have, a lot of background in ramping up and ramping down, and I think that we can handle, the funds for that. Mostly the disadvantaged communities. Anytime money is influxed into low-income communities, they always have this narrow definition. And I personally would love it if it was expanded out to the whole state, as the person from Imperial has said. Also, the last thing is that the difference between the PUC and our programs are that we do more measures, and that we have the ability, especially with these funds, to maybe branch out into drought measures, water measures. Solar water heating has always been the biggest greenhouse gas effect. So, those are the kind of things that I think that we can do with these funds as opposed to the PUC, and then working with the PUC to actually leverage all of this stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. And just in closing, let me say that those comments emphasize one of the reasons I've always been a supporter of community services programs, because they're not, the community service agencies are not siloed. So you go to weatherize somebody's house, and that you observe another need, and either through that agency or being able to connect the person with other services. It's got a social services component and a citizenship component, and a whole set of pieces where you can address the whole circumstance of the person and not simply come and say, well, that's not my job, I just do this one thing. And so that's what I think CAPS are particularly adept at, and one reason I've been supportive of them. So we are going to hold this BCP request open pending final actions on the CSD budget in the May revised, but I think you've observed there's a lot of interest in how this is going to be done, and it is interconnected with the other subcommittee's jurisdiction as well. So, thank you. Thank you. And finally, we have the Department of Child Support Services. And I'm going to call upon Kathleen Repich, Interim Director of Department of Child Support Services, and Linda Adams, Deputy for Administrative Services at the Department. And we already have the LAO and the Department of Finance in place. So, and LAO, why don't you scoot over so we can all sit together there? Great, thank you.
No problem.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
I'm Kathleen Repich, the Interim Director for the Department of Child Support Services, and I am joined by Linda Adams, our Deputy Director for Administrative Services, and Rebecca Stilling, our CIO. The Department of Child Support Services is designated as a single state entity responsible for ensuring that all functions necessary to establish, collect, and distribute child support are effectively and efficiently implemented. We have provided you with handouts which cover the program in detail, so I will just call out a few highlights. California's child support program is the second largest in the nation. Services are delivered through county child support agencies that serve almost 1.4 million children annually. Collections for last year totaled over $2.3 billion. All state child support programs are evaluated on 5 federal performance measurements in which the state is awarded incentive dollars based on its performance. Compared against 2012, California improved in 4 of the federal performance measures. cases with support orders established, collections on current support, cases with collection on arrears, and our statewide cost effectiveness for federal fiscal year 2013 is at an all-time high of $2.54. This is an improvement of 7 cents over last year. The state receives the maximum federal incentive dollars for 2 other federal performance measurements. Paternity established, as we are at 98.6%, and the percent of cases with a child support order, and we are at 89%. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Linda Adams to provide more detail on our budget.
Hi, I'm Linda Adams, the admin deputy for the department. The budget section of the PowerPoint starts on about page 11, has a lot of statistics and a lot of our dollars broken out by the different categories of the budget. Our budget's just under $1 billion, with 77% of those funds going to the local child support agencies in support of the program. Our program is funded 66% federal and 34% general fund. The general fund for the department is about $310 million, and it's stayed that way for right around that amount for probably 10 years now. The whole budget has stayed pretty flat funding. The child support automation system brought in a lot of funding to the department, but since that's been put into place, it's stayed relatively level. Speaking of the child support automation project, that budget has been declining over the last 4 years as we shifted from development to maintenance and operations, and our state disbursement unit has gone down by 1/3 since we did our new procurement back in 2012. Distributed collections over the last 4 years have increased by 2.6%. And we've seen a decrease in the amount recouped to the general fund as our collections shift from assistance to non-assistance collections. In 2009, our assistance collections were 23% of our total dispersed collections. That's gone down to 20% now. As Kathy mentioned, we're receiving our maximum in incentives on 2 of the performance measures. 2014-15, we're estimating $40 million in incentives, a 3% increase over the 13-14 level.
Okay. I guess the one question I have, let me make a comment and say it's great to see we're improving in so many areas. How does the department feel about how we currently stand in comparison to other states on our performance measures, particularly cost effectiveness? Should we still be doing better, or how?
We obviously can be doing better as we continue to reduce expenditures. We did hit a landmark this year by going over $2.50. That's the threshold for receiving more incentives, so we're pretty happy about that. In terms of our cost effectiveness, do you want to speak to that, or did you?
And I'm talking about the where we are relative to the other states.
To everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, we're better than Guam, I believe.
Hopefully that isn't saying like we are in public education, we're better than Alabama and Mississippi.
Probably. And we wrestle with this issue because we are, other states are way ahead of us with their cost effectiveness. I don't have the numbers. Have we given those to them?
Yes, it's part of the package.
It's part of your
package of the
PowerPoint. And so we look at ways, part of the formula to put the cost effectiveness out is the amount of monies that is distributed to the families as compared to the amount of money that we spend on the program. And so part of our efforts this last couple of years were to put out to the counties and to all of us, and we're looking at it this year at our strategic plan, of increasing our distributed collections, because that's important to the families, that we bring in the dollars and we distribute to the families and look for more efficient, effective ways to present this program in the state and reduce the cost to increase our cost effectiveness. So I see it as a two-prong approach. We have this year, and I think I mentioned it last year, that we were beginning an operational assessment where we were going out to 10 counties, pilot counties, and looking at what they have done to improve their cost effectiveness. We have just finished seeing the 10 counties and are beginning our analysis if there's any best practices that we see, and there are some indications that there are best practices that we may be able to leverage out to all the counties, and we're looking at counties of different sizes and different economic demographics. So we have a few things in place to try to be more cost effectiveness in California.
Okay, we'll leave it to a budget subcommittee. Just say, that's great, you're doing well in all these categories. Now tell me about the one that's not so good.
Right.
I realize that's what I just did, but nonetheless, there is a lot of good work that's going on, and there's improvement, so I didn't mean to overly focus on the one that sort of jumped out at us as not so good. But it does seem like it's be very worthwhile to continue to focus on improving that one.
Yes,
so
it is.
Legislative Analyst's Office?
No
comment. Finance? Any comment? Any public testimony? If there's not, I'll just say thank you very much. We're not going to be acting on this budget today,
yes.
But I do appreciate the update, and I presume we will be taking it up as part of the May revise hearing.
Okay.
Thank
you.
And that concludes the business of the day. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.